Hello, everybody. I'm speaking to you from Washington, D.C. at the moment. We will soon depart from here to New York City with one extra stop coming in before I head back. And it's been an exceptionally busy week and a half so far. But I want to use this video to give some feedback with regard to the Pioneer Initiative, where we are and the way forward. So since announcing the Pioneer Initiative about 2 weeks ago, maybe a little more, we have received countless emails, messages, and so forth. And over the last week or so, I have spent time answering probably more than 1,000 emails personally. And I'm very happy that I did that because it gave me a very good idea of where we stand, of what people are concerned about, what people think and feel, and so forth. And so I want to use this video to do a quick Q&A. Now, I've already done a Q&A after the initial launch, immediately after the initial launch of the Pioneer Initiative. But this Q&A is a response to the questions that we have had the most. And I'd like to go through each of them quickly because some of these questions are very valid and very important. And so the first question, there are 7 questions in fact. And I'll try to answer them more or less in order of how often we get there, but also just in a way that makes sense structurally. The first question we get so much is, how can I help? And now if you want to help, we are very grateful for that and we need your help. One way, or the first way in which you can help, is of course to become a supporter of the Pioneer Initiative. So I'll put the link in the description. That obviously is important because it empowers us to do the things that we intend to do. But you can help in other ways as well, including helping to spread the message on social media, speaking to people, helping with the opening up of opportunities. And we've had a lot of people reaching out to us with or about information. For example, reports that they want to share with us, people proposing that they help us with research and so forth. So what we will do with the Pioneer Initiative is to provide an opportunity, especially for our contributors, to be more actively involved in a way that suits your own unique skill set. So we've had people, for example, reaching out to us about helping us with graphic designing or video editing or research or logistics or administration and so forth. And so I would like to encourage you to become a supporter, and through those channels we will reach out to you and make sure that you get the opportunity to be more actively involved if you wish to be. The second question that we got quite a lot was people making contributions and then asking, how much do you need? Now, it's always difficult to talk about money in this sense, and we don't want to beg or plead for money, but obviously you need income or revenue to be able to fund your activities. So in terms of what we need, a quick estimate is we probably need another 200 contributors for the Pioneer Initiative to be at the point where we need to be for the year to be able to fund our most important expenditures. Now, there are a lot that we can do and want to do and intend to do that we cannot do yet because we don't have the resources. So if we have more contributors, obviously we can do more. We can spend the money on these projects. But at least in terms of getting it up and running as a startup, a quick back of the envelope estimate is about 200 contributors. So if you want to help in that sense, that would also be very, very useful and very helpful. A third question we got by quite a few people was about the extent to which this is an Afrikaner initiative, or the extent to which people who aren't Afrikaners can join or play a supportive role. Now, there are 2 parts of the answer. The first is, as I have said in the launch video about 2 weeks ago, that I am an Afrikaner. I'm very proud of my Afrikaner identity, and I also make no secret about the fact that I want to see the Afrikaner people have more freedom. We're not free at the moment, but there are tangible things I believe we can do to help us on the road towards freedom. And so in a certain sense, yes, internally we communicate in Afrikaans and so forth. So there certainly is an Afrikaner focus. But we also believe that a more sustainable future for the Afrikaner people cannot be one of the Afrikaners against the rest, or a solution for the Afrikaner people that creates some form of a problem for the rest. Now, as an Afrikaner, we don't believe in paternalism. We cannot prescribe to others what they should do or shouldn't do. But what we are working on primarily is a more sustainable political dispensation for South Africa and the peoples living in South Africa, or the nations living in South Africa. So we've had a lot of support coming in from Black South Africans from different communities. People saying, I'm a Zulu, but I support the initiative. I'm from this tribe or from this community, and I want to become involved. And we really welcome that. And a lot of English-speaking South Africans who have become involved, who want to become involved, we will certainly welcome that. So in a sense, there is an Afrikaner focus, and there will continue to be. But the solution we are working toward is not one for the Afrikaner people at the expense of others. And so this links to the fourth question, which is, what is the end goal? Where do we want to end up? And we've had some very detailed questions about what might happen 50 years from now, and people asking theoretical questions about what different forms of autonomy might look like in future and what might happen. And those are important questions and important topics that we need to go into. But at this stage, what we are saying is we need a better, more sustainable political dispensation for South Africa. And we use the word dispensation because we have made it very clear that we don't think, in defense of the president, we don't think the problem is simply because we have the wrong person who is the president of South Africa. In other words, that if South Africa has another president, we will still have most of the same problems. And also the problems are a bit more far-reaching than simply saying the wrong party is in power, that if one of the opposition parties were to take power, then suddenly these underlying fundamental structural problems that we have would go away. We need a political system that is more sustainable and that is not, as our current one, obviously on a downwards trajectory. So what we need is firstly decentralization, in other words, a system in which the central government has significantly less power and local communities or cultural communities have much more power over their own affairs. On the other hand, we need self-governance. We need people to be able to govern themselves in South Africa. And that could take many forms, and we'll talk about the different forms that might take later on. We've already mentioned some of this in some of our other communications. But with this in mind, our focus is partly as a think tank. In other words, we will continue to do research on these issues, on the different forms of self-governance, the extent to which it is practical or unpractical, the extent to which it could be implemented, what are the problems, where has it worked, where hasn't it worked. So there will certainly be a strong think tank focus. But it would be a think tank simultaneously acting as a pressure group. In other words, we already have a broad idea of what the solution is, as I mentioned, and we are already pursuing this broad direction. In other words, the direction of having a more decentralized political system and having more self-governance in South Africa along these lines. So the end goal could be different things, and we are working towards that as we move along, which is why we have decided to launch the Pioneer Initiative in a very preliminary way so that people can start joining and become involved, and we can then get your input. Through your involvement, we can crystallize what a more final destination or position could be. Then another question, which I'm very grateful for because it's a very important question, is do I need to be in South Africa? The short answer is no. And in fact, I would add that we are especially looking for supporters who do not live in South Africa. Every supporter is welcome, and we appreciate that. And people in South Africa can contribute in many ways because they are closer. so they can attend conferences and speak at events and be part of the planning process. But if you do not live in South Africa, you can play a very important role where you are. And that could mean many things. That could mean or imply writing to your senator or your congressman or whichever politician represents you. It could imply helping with the opening up of opportunities, whatever that could be. So we are going to have a particular focus on people who do not live in South Africa to be more actively involved. So if you don't live in South Africa, I really want to encourage you to become a contributor. Or if you live in South Africa and you have friends and family and contacts outside of South Africa, please reach out to them, because that will certainly open doors for us. Then the sixth question is meetings. So I have to say there were a lot of people asking for private meetings, really a lot. And I have to say that there's a lot that we need to do in the short run. And if we think of it in terms of that matrix, what is urgent and what is important, we have to focus on the important things, especially if it's important and urgent. But currently we have to be very cautious of how we manage our time. So private personal meetings is difficult, but there will be opportunities for personal engagement as we arrange workshops, conferences, and so forth. And a lot of people have sent through lengthy emails with ideas and suggestions, and you would know if you were one of them that I did respond. So please send us your ideas in writing. We do take it seriously when people send us suggestions and proposals. And most of what we have received was very useful, or useful to, at least to an extent. So we really encourage that. Then the last question is, how do we get there? How do we get to where we want to go? And this links a bit to the question of the end goal, in the sense that we know the current trajectory for South Africa is not a good one. We know that the future looks bleak if there's no intervention. We know that there are already people, especially on the left or the more radical aspects of South Africa, who are calling for some form of a regime change to move to a political system in which minorities are much more vulnerable. And so we need to have this conversation about what could be a better and a more sustainable future. And getting there implies different things. It implies making friends abroad. It implies reaching out within South Africa. It implies strengthening our own institutions. It implies a lot of things. But as I mentioned, the two main principles for now is decentralization and self-governance. And we can already pursue that through what you might call an education process, or writing about it, doing research about that, speaking about it, and so forth. And while we do that, also to actively campaign in this direction. I want to say thank you very much to all the supporters and contributors who have signed up already, all the messages of support, all the emails, all the people on our social medias, and so forth. We started out with hitting the ground running. And shortly after the launch, as a result of really big opportunities opening up, which you will see in the near future, very shortly after the launch, I had to take a flight to the United States to speak with some people on some platforms that you will see in the future. And so I'm very much looking forward to also what lies ahead in the next few days, but also to getting back home and to really start working on the nuts and bolts of this institution and getting it up and running. Thank you very much.